Good morning. I am Dr. Samir Rastogi, and today I'll discuss about global barriers in GIST treatment and research. I'm additional professor in medical oncology in All India Institute of Medical Sciences, GIST Clinic, New Delhi. As per my understanding, the global management of GIST, majority of patients are not getting the treatment which is ideal. And let's see why. Because of lack of multidisciplinary tumor boards, lack of expert pathology, sparsely available mutation testing and next generation sequencing, circulating tumor DNA in many countries, disparity in availability to drugs and access to drugs, databases and national registries are far from few, and patient advocacy, again, this is in infancy. There is lack of clinical trials and research. So let's take an example. This is from Benin, which is a West African country. It's a retrospective data from 2010 to 2020. Total number of patients were 15 and the median size was 11 centimeter. And almost 66% of these patients were metastatic. So let's see the cost of immunohistochemistry as compared to the guaranteed minimal wage. The cost of immunohistochemistry in a single patient was almost $167. The only drug which was available in Benin is imatinib, and that through from GPEP program. No sunitinib, regorafenib, or mutation testing for KIT and PDGFR is available. There are no tumor boards for this kind of rare disease. So there are countries where this kind of care is still existing, and we don't know, in absence of expert pathology, that these tumors are leiomyomas, schwannomas, lipomas. Many of them might be some sarcomas or carcinoid. So this is a paper coming from Gulf and Levant countries, where 11 medical oncologists from Gulf country formed a rare tumor GI group, and they laid down the challenges for GIST. The most important challenge was lack of expert histopathologists and also the lack of specialists, the lack of there is hardly availability of people with expertise in molecular analysis. The drugs, there is disparity in availability of drugs, even sunitinib and regorafenib is not a formulary drug in Iraq, in Lebanon. They are dealing with the challenging substandard generics. And in other countries, there is economic or war situation, which is understandably leads to difficult patient care. Most patients are managed by general surgeons. They are not operated by oncosurgeons. And sometimes the tyrosine kinase inhibitors are prescribed by general surgeons. And the literature is rife with the misdiagnosis that GIST can be, that it can masquerade as B-cell lymphoma. It can be confused with rectal cancer, with rare sarcomas, even on imaging, even on pathology. It might be close differential diagnosis of a lot of tumors. So first two points are discussed. Now there is mutation testing. Why mutation testing is important? Because a subset of GIST, SDH, PDGFR 842, RAF, and NF1, they are intrinsically refractory to approved TKIs. If we don't do mutation testing, perhaps we are treating 20% of patients with ineffective therapy rather than appropriate agent. And if we subject them to 3 years of adjuvant treatment, then perhaps there can be financial toxicity and they might have side effects of imatinib, because 3 years is quite a long duration. And now that ctDNA is coming, where we are detecting circulating tumor DNA, we can evaluate disease burden more comprehensively. Tissue diagnosis is not required and it has a shorter turnaround time. What kind of disease has ctDNA present? The disease which has higher volume disease, which has the diameter of the disease is almost more than 10 centimeter, and also there are more than 3 sites of disease, it might show almost 100% positive predictive value. So let's see how ctDNA has changed the management. This is a subset analysis from INTRIGUE trial, where in second line, repretinib was compared with sunitinib in GIST. And what they found that after getting ctDNA done in the population with exon 11 and 13, 14, sunitinib had a better progression-free survival than repretinib. And also in the exon 17, 18 with activation loop mutation, repretinib was much better than sunitinib. Perhaps in time to come, this kind of mutation analysis based treatment, especially in second line, will be there, and it's still there, existing in the parts where reparatinib is available. So even in United States, the SEER database says that, I mean, this is the recent paper 4 years back, and the frequency of mutation testing was uh, dismal, and it was 27%. This is data from our clinic where almost we got mutation testing for 70% of patients. But before coming to us, a lot of patients had already received treatment, and only 4% of patients had mutation testing. No patient had SDS testing, no patient had NTRK testing. But with us, we found that SDS deficient just was almost 10%. Similarly, this data comes from Mongolia, part of China, and it says, I mean, it's a data of 804 patients with GIST, and mutation testing was done in less than 10%. Again, very dismal and very disappointing. So this data was published recently in Journal of Clinical Oncology and was posted in ASCO 2024. And as we can see, they combined data of Hispanic population from US, Mexico, and Argentina. And what they found in Mexico, where the maximum number of patients was there, mutation testing was done only in 1.2% of patients, which is stark. So mutation testing, while it should be available everywhere in the world, is still not available. What about lack of drugs? So reparatinib was FDA approved in 2020 when they compared it in fourth line, and they found that there was progression-free survival benefit. It was 6.3 months versus 1 month. And look at the hazard ratio. It is, I mean, extremely bright, 0.15. And the hazard ratio is again 0.36 for survival. And this data comes from China, in which reparatinib was tested in advanced GIST. And again, the progression-free survival is so bright, 7.7 months. And but these are the only regions in which reparatinib is currently available. We can see it's America, it's China, certain part of Europe and Australia, and then nowhere else. So a large part of world is still struggling with the availability of this drug. Now look at avapritinib, which is approved in PDGFR 842. Again, based upon Navigator trial, it approved its FDA approval in 2020. And as you can see, the amazing waterfall plot in this poor prognosis subset. And you can see that the clinical benefit rate was touching almost 98%. But then what's its availability? Let's check its availability. So again, these are the places where application has gone for the review and for the approval, but it is still available only in certain part of America, Europe, and that's it. It's not available anywhere in the world, which is again so disappointing because these patients, patients in our country, in Africa, in major part of world, they are not able to access this drug. So NGS, pathology, lack of expert physicians, lack of drugs. What about databases and national registry? So I came across few interesting research papers that why patient advocacy and patient education is important and plays a unique role in this. If you see, this is a paper from Life Raft Group, and it says what are the barriers to mutation testing in Life Raft Group members, people who join Life Raft Group. And as we can see, this is a survey where 295 patients and caregivers participated. Now, the people who got mutation testing done were almost 80%. And let's see what made them do mutation testing. As you can see, doctor suggested mutation testing in 129 patients. But in a significant percent of patients, LifeRaft group suggested mutation testing. And a part of patients were intelligent enough to ask their doctor for mutation testing. So this kind of input is required in rare diseases where advocacy plays a role, where patient education plays extremely important role. So what about registry and databases? It's a very low incidence disease, and it's difficult to recruit subjects in clinical trials. We need to make clinical policies based upon some data. We don't know trend over the time and demography of different subgroups. So just like this is a Dutch registry, and it compared the data of sunitinib versus imatinib escalation. You can note there was numerical difference where PFS in sunitinib was higher than imatinib.
high dose imatinib. But nevertheless, this data comes from registry and can never be there would never be a randomized clinical trial for this. So such questions can be, of course, answered by good registry, and many more such questions. There is gross lack of clinical trials and research, and hardly any clinical trial is running in majority of the world. But then there is a quote which I came across, that wherever there is a challenge, there is also opportunity to face it and to demonstrate that we can do better by our will and determination. So there are opportunities for collaboration in virtual tumor boards. In extremely rare subset of GIST, data pulling is being done, and individual countries cannot have enough patients to answer the scientific question. Advocacy needs a big push from everyone, from the government, from the patient, from the hospitals, and drugs, other TKIs like cabozantinib and non-approved TKI like sorafenib, dasatinib, they need to be further studied. So these are the papers from India, from our clinic, where we have reported SDH GIST. This is a paper of 9 SDH patients, carnase triad, neurofibromatosis 1 GIST, avapritinib in GIST, and also our data for 103 patients of GIST and mutation analysis. And how things change for us, because we started doing virtual tumor boards with Life Raft Group. We are doing immunohistochemistry for SDHB, which is quite cost effective upfront in all the cases. And currently, we have phase 2 trial for cabozantinib going on in fourth line setting. And I'm glad to share that we have already recruited 7 patients. We also have a cross-sectional study for patient-reported quality of life and cognitive impairment in gastrointestinal stromal tumor. So I'll end my talk, and I think things can be changed, and we can again come and collaborate and take each other's help. And I'm thankful to Life Raft Group for providing opportunity for this talk. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for listening.